Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Colonel David McIllece, who I've learned has the nickname or call name Gyro. He is a U.S. Air Force leader with over 30 years of experience in international security, technology, strategy, and defense acquisition. He is a foreign affairs officer, which is a really exciting and unique opportunity for you to learn about. I don't know if this is correct, but the way I think about FAOs is they are kind of the diplomats of the Defense Department. My understanding is they actually get better training, I think, from what I've heard, than our U.S. diplomats do. It's a really impressive program, and we do have quite a few alumni who've been FAOs. So this is a real treat for us to learn about the Foreign Affairs Officer. He's also a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School, and he's advanced U.S. partnerships in South Asia, the Indo-Pacific, and Latin America. Specifically, for those of you who are in Latin American studies or speak Latin American language, he is the Secretary General of SICOFAA, which stands for the System of Cooperation Among the American Air Forces, which addresses issues of interoperability among the Air Force and Space Forces of 23 hemisphere nations. So really interesting area that might be worth exploring as well. Colonel McIllece holds advanced degrees in electrical engineering, international relations, and national security, with over 500 flight hours in diverse military aircraft. So we're so excited to welcome him back to BYU. Please join us in welcoming Colonel David McIllece.
Well, Corey, thank you for your very, very kind introduction. It really is an honor to come back to BYU. As I drove down here, and by the way, this turned into an impromptu family reunion. I brought with me my mother, who is a graduate of BYU from 1967. She graduated in medical technology, microbiology, and I learned was like one class away from being a chemistry major. So she set a high bar for us in our family. I also have my older sister, who is the only one on the front row that did not attend or graduate from BYU, but she did graduate from a fantastic blue and white school up the road in Logan from Utah State. I also have my youngest son, Daniel, who is here with his newly announced fiancée, Hannah. They are also in your department, taking classes from your department here in this school, in this program. And then I have my niece, Anna, who is an art student here at BYU, and it's really fantastic to have family, reconnect with family. I would also be remiss if I did not mention that today is the 78th birthday of the United States Air Force. 78 years, thank you. Being really the world's greatest air and space power, and really been my privilege to serve in the United States Air Force. My journey, both my BYU journey and my Air Force journey, we did a little math on the way down here, started 36 years ago to the month. In September of 1989, I showed up here at BYU campus as a very wide-eyed freshman student and cadet in the Air Force ROTC program that you have here, which, by the way, is one of the best, most highly recognized ROTC programs across the nation. I didn't know that at the time, but I quickly learned from all the fantastic people, programs, and resources at BYU that really gave me a tremendous preparation for what would unfold in the future. So my purpose here today is to just tell you a little bit of my BYU story and the path that our military and family life led to inform you specifically about one important part of my career, which is the latter part of my career where I still am, serving as a foreign area officer in the United States Air Force, so that you are informed as to what that is. Whether you will end up being in uniform, some could end up choosing a military service path or not. I've worked with a tremendous number, with a large number of tremendous professionals in my international posts that were BYU grads, many of them. whether it be in the State Department or in other agencies, and U.S. government agencies or other capacities. And this program produces some of the most highly prepared and I think recognized participants in that community. So it really is an honor for me to come and speak with you. Though I'm not an alum of this program, I'm very pleased to come back to my alma mater and to talk to you. So my BYU story. I'm a Utah native. I was born and raised in the Salt Lake Valley, just around the mountain. I was raised in a BYU, University of Utah rivalry family. My older sister was the only one that didn't pick sides. Two of us went to BYU, my brothers, and my other two brothers went to the University of Utah. But we had all our bases covered, all the great schools here in this state. I acknowledge my father, who's passed away some years ago, who served a mission in Brazil. And he brought a deep love of the people and the language, the food, the music. He was one of the first recreational soccer coaches in the 1970s here in the Wasatch Front. He brought that love of football back here that I learned. I learned to play soccer before I learned to play baseball, and that was unusual at that time. Well, I wanted to serve. The other hero in my life was my grandfather, my mom's dad, who, as a 19-year-old, was living in Draper, Utah when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, went down and signed up, like just about everybody else did at that time. He ended up serving in the United States Navy as an aviator and was in the Pacific and as a fighter pilot off of an aircraft carrier. He was shot down at least once and survived. He came back, went on to have a great career as an airline pilot. And whenever my grandfather would come into town, I would be re-immersed in all that he did, both as a young man and was continuing to do. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to fly. And I wanted to do it I wanted to serve my country as well. I had that inculcated in me. I wanted to serve and I wanted to fly. So how can I do that? Well, strangely enough, among all my siblings, I was the only one that was gifted with bad vision. So I couldn't fulfill the dream of being a pilot. It simply was not going to be possible with the vision that I had to be accepted into military flight training. But my mother's very technical mind was part of what I was inherited. I was a nerd. I studied science and physics and math, and I was pretty good at it. So when the time came, I decided that if I couldn't fly those aircraft, I was going to design them, and that's what I wanted to do. I was fortunate to get a scholarship, an opportunity to come here to BYU with an excellent engineering school. The U.S. Air Force decided that I should learn or assigned to me the discipline of electrical engineering. I didn't know what that was when I got started, by the way. I soon found out that, I don't know if it's still the case, the hardest major on campus. I don't know if it still is, but that was a bit intimidating, but I barely made it over the finish line, although I feel that BYU prepared me in ways that I only come to appreciate later on. That training was both technical from the engineering department, electrical engineering department here. It was also through my missionary service. During in the middle of my BYU time, served a mission in Canada. Was called to be a Spanish-speaking missionary. I had a very interesting experience, learning to find and teach the gospel to those primarily refugee community. Latin American families from all over Latin America, but primarily Central America, that in the early 90s had found refuge in Canada, thanks to programs that the Canadians had set up to receive them. And that, combined with the leadership training that I got out of my ROTC time, which was extremely valuable, really gave me kind of three pillars that I was able to take advantage of in the years to come. Well, what I've got, you can see on display up here is just a mixture of photographs from my career I want to talk just briefly about the first decade of my career, because the first 10 years of my career was spent doing engineering and technology, and I was fortunate, as was mentioned, to be accepted to the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School. And that does not mean I became a test pilot, by the way. That means that I became a flight test engineer. If you'll notice, all the aircraft that are on display up there have got at least 2 seats in them. So I get to fly with test pilots, but a fantastic opportunity for me to enter into the world of not just the engineering, but military operations and flight test. And it really was a dream come true. It was the fulfillment of many of the aspirations that I had from my youth, and also a fantastically rigorous education that prepared me well for the ongoing military service that I was able to perform. But something happened that I was hoping would happen. I didn't know when it would happen. It happened about the 10-year point of my what has now become a 30-year journey, that I learned about a program that would sponsor me and my family to go live overseas and study in a foreign university in a foreign language. It was called the Olmsted Scholar Program. What I learned is that from the 1960s, this program had been set up to sponsor military officers at about their mid-career point, and try to broaden their perspective, put them into an environment that was uncomfortable, put them and their families, if they had a family, into an environment where they would be challenged to see the world through different eyes, to see from a perspective that is not just the American perspective. And it was a life-changing experience. The photograph that I've got listed here is me and my lovely wife, which I need to pause and acknowledge Angela, who couldn't be here today. We live currently in Tucson, Arizona, and she is occupied with a busy schedule of her own. But I could not have done any of this without Angela. She's followed me. We counted, she's moved our living arrangements 22 times in the last 30 years. And all along the way with our children, really being the rock of our family when I'm called to whatever the requirements of my service were. But truly, this was a fantastic opportunity for the entire family. This is standing outside of our home in New Delhi, India. That program, interestingly enough, with certain parallels to what many of us are familiar with in the missionary program. While I submitted an application for this program, they gave me a list of universities that I could provide to them as places I'd be willing to go, but I did not select where I would go. I was called, in a sense, to the location by the foundation, and when they found out that I was already a Spanish speaker, they actually removed any Spanish-speaking universities off the list because they wanted me to be challenged. They wanted me to learn something new. And that's why they gave me the opportunity to go to New Delhi, to India, and learn to speak Hindi, which, as a father of 4, I think I was in my mid-30s, I decided to take a deep breath and jump into that. And it was a tremendous broadening experience for me to learn about a history and a culture, a part of the world, through the window of their language, through the window of their culture. And I can sincerely tell you, I learned volumes. I learned to appreciate things from an entirely different perspective, and a great accumulation of experience that came from the 2 years, essentially being a graduate student, and walking the streets of India, speaking in their language. And I'll talk some more about that later, about how important I felt that was for me, and how important I think many of you can appreciate this, but I wanted to reinforce the importance of language, not just as communication, but as connection. And I'll come back to that. So those first years that were spent doing things like flight test were then transformed into an experience where this is also a picture of us traveling in the Himachal Pradesh region of northern India. That's right on the border of Kashmir. The U.S. ambassador would not let me go into Kashmir. So the best I could do is go to the border at a high mountain pass. But I was able to go and talk to people and talk to them on the street, the common man on the street, and get perspectives and insights that I couldn't get from a textbook by talking to those. What did they think of the history of the region, of the future of the region? What did they want? And I received a tremendous education just from talking to people on a regular basis. Let's go ahead and move forward. I just wanted to briefly touch on what my career looked like and highlight a couple of things. So this is, I think, fairly typical. It may not look exactly like this for a military officer, whether in the Air Force, in the Army, in the Navy. I have many friends in those services, but a very similar pattern. The first decade or so of your career, you specialize in what you need to know, what the military calls on you to specialize in. And for me, that was in engineering and in flight test. And that was really the focus of those initial years. But then I got that opportunity to go to India, and that started a path for me to continue to both serve and to learn in the international arena, in international affairs. I got a chance to be a squad commander, which is a unique opportunity in the military, which I tremendously valued, and that was back in Massachusetts. I then had a series of assignments that alternated largely between international affairs in places like the Asia-Pacific and working with nations from India to Japan, from Australia, really to China, although our relationship with China is, of course, not so much a partner relationship as it is a balanced relationship, even a competitive relationship. Some years in Washington, D.C., read here, the Pentagon. It's hard not to have a military career that spans more than a decade or two without getting a tour at the Pentagon, but a fantastic, very important part of my career to learn how our national security, our national defense, now called the Department of War, has just been given a new name, which actually is a return to history for those of us who are students of history, what we were called before and during the Second World War, but served in the Pentagon. And then for the last almost decade, to serve in places like Colombia, where I was able to use the Spanish language that I brought to my military before I came into my military service, that came out of my missionary days. I had to bring those back to life because I'd spent at least 15 years learning and speaking Hindi. A little bit of a rough transition, but it worked. Came back. And then bouncing back to Pakistan, where I was working in our embassy in Islamabad and working with the Pakistani military closely, and used my Hindi because those of you who know the South Asian region, if you can speak Hindi, you can also speak Urdu. They are interspeakable languages, although I have a hard time reading Urdu as it's written in a different script. But was able to, again, use that and then finished where I am now, running an international military cooperation organization, a fantastic opportunity that's now focused back on the Western Hemisphere. I work and lead my organization every day in Spanish, with the occasional English mixed in there, but what we do is to pull together the air forces from Canada to Chile, their commanders and their staffs, and their operations to do things like respond to natural disasters. And we've done that. Just in the last 12 months, activated our system 5 times to respond primarily to wildfires. That seems to be the natural disaster of the last number of months. But floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, the occasional volcano, we integrate and organize so that we can effectively and rapidly cooperate among air forces to save lives. And it really is a noteworthy. It's not just the big countries that help the small countries. This January, we all probably saw the extent to wildfires that were attacking California. Very, very severe problem in California. We had both the Canadian and the Mexican Air Force come and help us fight those fires, which just shows that it's a system that benefits everyone who participates in it, and that includes us. So talking about that, I'll just emphasize, and I want to spend a good piece of time here talking about, and I've marked them in blue, the foreign area officer assignments that I've held in the military. So I'd like to educate you a little bit about what a foreign area officer is in our United States military. So and I'll go through these bullets so that we can cover all of our bases. Really, you are looked to provide regional expertise when we operate in the international arena with our partners. Between our agencies, there's a significant amount of coordination that needs to take place between our government agencies to accomplish the interests of our nation abroad. And those, when it says joint, when it says international, obviously with partner nations. When it says joint, that's between the services. Do we work well, the Army, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Space Force? Do we all work well together? And then the interagency roles between the various departments. The State Department, chief among them, but many agencies that participate. You also have to have a professional demeanor. You are a military diplomat. You are called upon, depending on your specific assignment, to be in diplomatic situations and in both transmitting and receiving information. It's not a clandestine kind of thing. It's open. You're in your uniform and you are attending events, whether it be socials and parties. And when they look at you in your uniform and they speak with you, they are, in a sense, communicating with the United States on the topics, on defense and security topics. And so it is an official channel of communication that a uniformed diplomat serves in our system. And of course, interact extensively with senior officials from our government as well as with foreign governments. I've said in many meetings with ambassadors or chiefs of mission where when the topic comes up and the question comes to me, I need to respond and give them my best military advice for the situation. And that's only one part of the puzzle, because there are economic concerns that others provide. There are political concerns that others will provide. And in a U.S. Embassy country team, we proudly serve as one of many members in that embassy environment. We advocate, as I was hinting earlier, pointing to my uniform, that they will look to us to provide air, space, and cyber expertise for those types of operations. And to make sure that the other thing we do is we build relationships. I would build relationships with, very professional relationships, with foreign military partners. There is a tremendous amount of good that comes from becoming interoperable with other militaries, being able to exchange personnel. Sometimes we do that. To, when a crisis hits, to all know what the basic requirements of operations will be so that we can perform them in a safe and a rapid and an effective manner. So security cooperation is a big part of what a foreign area officer does. That's essentially going to a partner nation and strengthening their defense and security, their military capacities, and help them to, if they choose, appreciate to adopt the practices as well as the morals, the values that we project, which is, the military following the orders of political leadership. You read in many situations historically of military coups and things of that nature. Very proudly, I've seen many of the military partners that I've worked with have inculcated the same values of strong support for their democratically elected leadership, whether they agree in every detail or not. And that's an important part of security cooperation and really the transmission of those values. And what I'm also very proud of is, almost without exception, when I have dealt with foreign air forces, partner nation air forces, they want to operate like we do. They want to use our systems, our operations, our practices, and they hold themselves, my experience has been, they hold themselves to the very highest standards of military service, like we have an oath to a constitution and to uphold the law of their land. And that has been a tremendous source of satisfaction in the service. We also seek opportunities always to advance our U.S. national security objectives. because at the end of the day, we always have to ask ourselves, is what we are doing going to advance our defense and security, make us safer, make us more prosperous? And that always has to be the bottom line rationale for everything that we do. As it turns out, making our partner nations, our allies, stronger and safer makes us safer. And that has been an underwriting theme of my service. And I'll also end with some thoughts about where I think that that's actually an inspired outcome that comes from that cooperation. And then finally, a FAO is, of course, language-enabled, culturally literate, and needs to be things like resourceful, independent-minded. You may be the only military officer at maybe a smaller embassy across the globe. I've worked with some of them. They're in smaller nations. You may be the only military officer there on a country team and need to be able to act very independently in that environment. Obviously with the support of other U.S. professionals that are stationed with you, but you may be the only one in a uniform. To be self-motivated, take initiative, and always to be action-oriented. In many ways, FAOs are at the front lines, whether our nation is directly involved in a conflict or not. I know for a fact, as a simple example, and a current one, that in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine right now, there is a large community of FAOs that are actively working to make sure that our interests are being advanced, that we're supporting our partner nation, in this case Ukraine, and the other nations in Europe. So FAOs can be very close to current conflicts, even if the nation itself is not in that conflict, because we need to have eyes and ears in those situations. So hopefully that summarizes, in general, what a foreign area officer is. Before we go into questions, there is this matter, and I would like to also frame, as you go out into your service, international, in whatever capacity it is, whether you're working in government, whether you're working in the State Department, whether you work in international business and other kinds of capacities, I just hope you can appreciate that there is a community of defense military professionals that will be virtually everywhere you would go and could go, and hopefully equip you with some of this so that as you get out into whatever direction you go, that you can be informed and know that this is a resource, right? These are professionals that you can and should seek to build relationships with and work with, because there's a tremendous synergy that occurs, especially in the U.S. government interagency, to get the job, get the mission done, whatever that mission happens to be. So some of the items I just wanted to point out here. This is a picture of me in Islamabad, Pakistan. This is a good example of humanitarian assistance training. These are, I call them hero dogs. These are rescue dogs that the Colombian Air Force were training with. They were actually very proficient, and we had teams with similar capacities that were down in Medellin, Colombia at the time, practicing jumping out of an airplane with a dog strapped across your chest into a conflict zone. The scenario we practiced was an earthquake, and we actually had them, we were watching them parachute into a zone, a field that was set up as a notional earthquake zone, and watch them deploy with their dogs over to a simulated building that had fallen and caved in, and they were sniffing through the rubble trying to find survivors. Tremendous, very technical capabilities that need to be practiced and are amplified when we have partners who can do the same. Have multiple teams coming from multiple countries to respond in the case of a disaster, for that example. This is, I'll get to that in a second. This is a great example of working with more than just one nation. We are, in this picture, in Denmark, standing in front of an F-16 that they've painted as the Dannebrog, which was one of their, think of it as like the Air Force Thunderbirds, one of their aircraft that they had painted in that special scheme, but that the Colombian Air Force was looking into acquiring for their use, their defense use, So we had 3 nations represented in the picture because the U.S., of course, has to stand and adjudicate and approve a transfer of anything that we have sold or transferred to one nation if they want to sell it and transfer it to another. But a tremendous opportunity to build partnerships across the globe, from Europe to Latin America. And then finally, I want to talk about this. This is a great picture my wife took when we were on traveling in India. And we had made a stop, and I got out, and I did what I always committed myself to do in that environment, which was if you've ever been to India, has anybody ever here traveled to India before? Have any? Yeah. So if you travel to India, Indians will generally easily spot who we are just by our dress and our mannerisms. They'll expect you when you open your mouth to speak English. And that's very common. That's part of the British legacy of India and its history. And a great number of Indians are able to speak their version of English and communicate very effectively. But I would open my mouth and Hindi would come out. And whenever that would happen, my wife said that, a crowd would gather. Because I was doing something that was very unexpected. And this was what I wanted to emphasize to you, is that one of the great advantages that comes and that we were benefited from that I was benefited from in my service as a foreign area officer is that when you reach out to people, you learn their language, you live in their culture, and you connect to them. You're doing more than just communicating to them, and that is a powerful thing. It is a tremendously powerful thing. I think it's something we might take for granted. For many of us have learned foreign languages. I know virtually probably every hand in this room will probably go up with one or more foreign languages they've learned. I want you to appreciate the power of that and the importance of maintaining those capabilities to connect with others in their language. I was also struck by an announcement just a few days ago that the Apple Corporation is going to be issuing iPods with real-time AI-enabled language translation. Did everybody see that? That is going to be a powerful tool. In fact, we've been using AI-enabled translation in my current organization to help us with participants who aren't proficient Spanish speakers be able to participate in our meetings. And so that's very important. But I got to thinking about that just the other day. And I thought, it still is not as powerful. And it will never replace, no matter how fast the microprocessors run their algorithms to do efficient translation, there will be nothing as powerful as walking up to another human being and engaging with them in their own language. So remember that as you go out to serve. And as you connect with people, you will represent something by having shown the effort and committed the energy to do that. And you'll have access to a whole new world of interaction, positive interaction with others if you learn to speak their language. Well, the last thing I wanted to end with before going to questions were really some of I call them the spiritual roots of my military service. And this goes back to where I started, when I was a young man and decided that I wanted to serve my country, decided I wanted to be in the military. I also had those goals that I wanted to take my family overseas at some point. I was greatly influenced not only by my father's missionary service and what he brought back and what he exemplified in the love that he radiated about the people and the culture that he served in, but that I had experienced that for myself when I had served as a missionary. And I wanted to project that. I wanted to apply that and make that of use in my military service as well. And since I was young, I remember reading scriptures. These two out of the Doctrine and Covenants are ones that have always been a sort of a foundation for me in my service. And that is that the law of the land, which we are blessed with, which is constitutional, supporting that principle of freedom and maintaining rights and privileges, belongs to all mankind and is justifiable before me. So when I hear the words of Jesus Christ say that constitutionally provided rights and privileges that we have that actually started with our Constitution, they are a gift that are justifiable for and intended to promulgate to all peoples. And then, according to the laws and constitution of the people, which I have suffered to be established and should be maintained for the rights and protection of all flesh, according to just and holy principles, that every man may act in doctrine and principle pertaining to futurity, according to the moral agency which I have given unto him, that every man may be accountable for his own sins in the day of judgment. And so I think the efforts that we make, not only to protect the freedoms that we have been gifted, but also do whatever we can to support and strengthen those freedoms in other parts of the world that have adopted those same constitutional guarantees for the liberties of their people. That is something worth pursuing. That is worth all of our energy and the application of all of our talents. So with that, I want to save some time. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. So please, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sir, how did you make the... Hold on for the mic just a second.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Everett Scott. Sir, my question was, how did you get approached, or how did you make that jump from the technical side to the foreign area side? Kind of how were you introduced to that, or was that something that they invited you to do, or you were something that you were curious about?
Well, I mentioned I had some simple goals when I came into active duty. I wanted to fly military aircraft. I wanted to be a colonel someday. I didn't really want to be a general. That's kind of a different story. But the third one is I wanted to take my family, and I wanted to live and serve overseas with my family. And so it really was, I sought it out. I found it. I actually stumbled upon the program, the Olmsted Scholar Program. I stumbled upon it when I was preparing for the promotion board from captain to major, so at about that 10-year point. But when I found it, I pursued it. It took me a couple tries. You never get anything on the first try, by the way. That is kind of a rule of life, I think, and if you do, count yourself very, very fortunate. But it was something I sought out.
Hi, my name is Tyler. I'm just wondering if there's any strategies you would point to as being important for you in your current work in building trust between not only yourself and the other military colleagues, but also between other nations as you represent our country.
Okay, strategies and how to build those relationships. Well, I think I start with where I was emphasizing earlier. If you're assigned to a particular country or a region, do everything you can to prepare yourself ahead of time to demonstrate to them that you're not there for transactional behavior. You're there to really see, the interests of our nation and the intersection of their interests and where those lie. And I think that starts with doing everything you can. If you don't know the language and you don't have time to proficiently learn the language, at least learn some of the language, right? Demonstrate to them by example, your intent, your good intent. And I think learning about them, learning to appreciate their culture, learning to appreciate and observe and respect their history, their norms, their religion, which is a huge driving factor in so many countries of the world, and learning to respect that, I think that will go a long way, because at the end of the day, it will be what you get done will be produced more by the relationship that you build with them than really by any other factor. And so those are the things I would recommend to you.
Hi, my name is Cole, and I was wondering, does which branch of the military you serve in impact when you applied for a FAO, where you would serve, or is it purely based on your foreign experience?
It does depend on the service. The United States Army actually has the largest community of foreign area officers. The U.S. Army is just the largest service. There are more human beings in the United States Army. But I think the U.S. Air Force has followed their example. The U.S. Army has been doing the business of foreign area officers for many decades. It's only been in recent years that the U.S. Air Force has decided to make a career field commitment. In other words, make it a true path. And normally what will happen is FAOs don't just serve as FAOs. FAOs first become and are proficient in some professional capacity, a pilot, an intelligence officer. For me, it was engineering and flight test. Because when you bring those operational expertise, you have to have the credibility that comes with having done military operations with experience. And then you combine it with what you bring in your interest. Because FAOs aren't, serving as a FAO is not for everyone in the military. It's actually a very small community within the U.S. military, but it's a very high value, high impact part of the U.S. military for what we need to do, because our mission is international, our mission is worldwide. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. And if it didn't, please just ask again. I want to make sure I answer whatever you are interested to know.
Thanks. I had a question on what you just mentioned. Why did you want to be a colonel and not a general? And the more general question is, what advice would you have for people about the relationship between different kinds of interests someone might have and different career paths that you've encountered?
Okay, thank you. The first is, I think I had been given enough mentorship and counseling to know that one should not aspire to be a general. I mean, that's not to say that there are those who don't. That's an incredibly difficult level of work. And I think what I really wanted to embody was that I wanted to reach kind of the pinnacle of my career, and as the word implies, a general officer does whatever the leadership of the military needs them to do. And you know, I would have happily served with the consent and support of my wife, of course. As a general officer, it's a very difficult life that they lead, a very high stress job. But I think what I did is I set my sights at a goal that I thought was appropriate for me to reach to, and then let the chips fall where they may, as it were. And that was really my motivation. And then your second question, would you repeat it for me?
Oh, yeah. Do you have any advice more broadly about the different kinds of career paths that you've seen and how they fit with different kinds of interests that someone might have going in?
Yeah. Well, you know, I would say in general, when in military service, we serve the needs of the nation, right? We don't pick and choose what we want to do. We receive orders, and we fulfill those orders to the very best of our ability. I received some great advice as a young officer, which was that somebody's going to have to do all of these fulfill all these roles. Somebody has to do them. You know, some of them seem thankless, some of them seem very exciting. But if you prepare yourself, especially if you align them with your interests, if you are introspective about the things that you enjoy doing, the things that you would like to learn to do, if you are self-aware and, you know, talk with family, with friends, and get feedback about, you know, what do you think I'm naturally good at, or that I could develop, I could have an inclination to do. If you follow those, you're actually making yourself, and in my opinion, in my military service, making myself more developed by following those interests makes me more valuable to the nation, because I'm doing the things that I'm going to be motivated to do. Now, that's not to say that I've always been able, and I was always assigned to do the things that I enjoyed to do. There were plenty of circumstances where I saluted smartly and went and did something that was extremely difficult and not enjoyable. But that's a part of service. I think that taking the time, and you're in a phase of, you know, your education where this is what you can do. And I hope that you do things while you're at BYU, like, you know, I got to fill an elective. You know, do something that may seem far and wide from the usual. Explore, right? I think that's where the term university may, you know, have roots in, right? Take advantage of that and try to find out where your interests and maybe a talent you didn't know you had may lie. And I think doing everything you can to align those interests with those opportunities is only going to benefit you, and it's going to benefit those who you are serving, because you'll give it more. You'll give it more of your energy, and you'll achieve. You'll climb higher. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah.
work with young people in developing what's called executive functioning skills. Oh, there you go. You're like a rock star. In my line of work, I help and support young people in high school to develop executive functioning skills, which is a set of skills which essentially won't be listed on your resume, but they will help you get hired and stay hired and help you lead effectively. It's, stress tolerance and time management and organization and like managing yourself, your time, your stuff, and connecting with people around you, being self-aware. And it sounds like a flexible mindset and social emotional skills like putting your phone down and actually engaging with people will lead to opportunity. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of using technology to your advantage, but not you controlling your technology and not letting it control you, right? And building relationships and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's a great question from my beloved sister. Yes, personal connections, emotional intelligence, sometimes this is referred to as, connecting with people in a real and genuine way I think it's essential to leadership. I think that it's essential to your success. And I think the use of technology has to be carefully thought through. Incredibly powerful technological tools that are just really exploding all around us, right? And learning to use them in an effective way and in a way that avoids the potential downfalls of those technologies is something that I think all of us have got to spend time thinking about. They are so powerful, many of these technologies, that they can overcome and affect us in negative ways. And the responsible party for that has to be us as the individual at the end of the day. We have to take the responsibility for the use of those tools. But the good news is that no machine will ever replace a human-to-human contact and interaction. And that will always be the foundation, I think, of everything that we do, no matter what our profession is, right? No matter what we do in service, it's a human-to-human connection. And to the extent that we practice, just like anything else, you will never get good at anything that you do not practice. If you will practice it, you will get better at it. And that's probably the best answer I could give to that. Thank you. Well, I know we've run out of time, but thank you once again, Corey. I appreciate the time to be with you.
Since Colonel McIllece is a military diplomat, we wanted to thank him as part of our NSSA and our FSSO group. And we hope that if you haven't signed up or checked the QR code on your way out, you'll do that. We hope to see you back. And thanks for coming. Thanks to Colonel McIllece. One more round of applause.